Major funding for these broadcasts has been provided by grants from New York Community Bank, AmTrust Title Insurance Company, Perfect Building Maintenance, M&T Bank, Customers Bank, Marks Paneth LLP, Ariel Property Advisors, Sterling National Bank, Capital One Bank, Collins Building Services, Meridian Capital Group. Additional support has been provided by grants from AVR Realty Company, Amerant Bank, Bank of America Merrill Lynch, B6 Real Estate Advisors, Briarwood Organization, Chase Commercial Term Lending, Chase Commercial Mortgage, Citizens Bank, CPEX Real Estate Services, Douglaston Development Levine Builders, Flushing Bank, Friedman LLP, Handler Properties LLC, Handler Real Estate, Hodges Ward Elliott INC, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Center at Syracuse University, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company, Matone Group, New Banks, Newmark Knight Frank, Optimum Window Manufacturing Corp., People's United Bank, Rockefeller Group, Rosewood Realty Services, SJP Properties, Stonehenge NYC, TD Bank, Terra CRG, the Merengoff Family Foundation, and these friends. You know, my crystal apple says it's really hard to be in the restaurant business. You gotta be crazy to be in the restaurant business. So today, with the help of my executive producer and normal co-host, Drew Nieporent, we've assembled a group of stellar operators, some even chefs, with the exception of Drew. And Ricky at one time was a chef, so we'll put him over here, to talk about the challenges and the opportunities to be in the restaurant business. My guests include the inimitable Drew Nieporent, okay? Owner of many restaurants, operator, truly an operator. Marc Murphy, a fantastic chef, owner of operator of restaurants. Ricky Passarelli, owner and operator of restaurants. And last but not least, the most crazy individual we know, chef owner, David Burke. But you know what? Why are you in the restaurant business? It's too expensive to operate. What are the opportunities? You must be out of your...
You know, Michael, I've been coming on this show. We've done the show
for the
now
last
for years.
10 years at least.
For years. And I would say today, the unfortunate state of the union for the restaurant business is you can't make any money. You can gross a lot of money, but because the rent is so high and the labor is high and the food is high to purchase, no money.
Marc, you know, you're a master chef, and you ran the landmark restaurants that everybody knew. The one in the Time Warner Center was always busy, you know, big crowd. What happened?
Well, you know, it was 12 years. It was a good run. I was very proud of what we did, but it was time to go. It was time to go do something different. And, you know, after a while, I had to do a refresh. I didn't know if I wanted to stay there. There was a lot of things changed in the building. You know, Related moved to Hudson Yard.
Right.
CNN, Time Warner moved to Hudson Yard. So there was a lot of employees, a couple thousand employees that lived right upstairs from me, all of a sudden moved out, and Deutsche Bank's supposed to move in 2 or 3 years. And we all know we're not really sure what's happening there, since I already know that, you know, in the press it was already had already given back 2 of the floors to the landlord. So my lunch business went down extremely, quite a bit, and I was worried about the next 2 years still having to pay a pretty big chunk of rent and having lost a lot of business in the building. So and also, you know, after 12 years, I thought, all right, I've done this a while. It's time to go find something else to do.
Ricky, let's talk about, you know, Bobby Vans has been in business, the initial one, over 50 years, 51 years.
50 years, yeah. Old brand. Same story as Drew was saying, high gross. The sales are still there. Just, you know, the costs are through the roof. This is a very expensive city to operate in, and it's, you know, eats away at your margins.
And by the way, we have to pass the cost on to the guest.
They don't like that.
And they don't like that.
Right.
I mean, remember 21 used to be, the 21 hamburger? Remember what a novelty that was? And they kept on, it was like the most expensive hamburger. Now
$21.
everybody charges $25 for a hamburger. And there'll be a $32 hamburger right around the corner.
And it won't be just Danielle.
No,
Okay,
exactly.
you know what, David, you've
Exactly.
adapted. You've changed over the years. I mean, you were the chef working for a company, then you went in your own business. How are people adapting on being a chef? There's a term called the management agreement today. Certain people don't want master chefs because it's easier not having a master chef than having, I hate to say, a prima donna over there. I'm not saying you're one.
There's a couple of some restaurants you can't afford a really great chef to be in one restaurant sometimes anymore. So, an owner of a small restaurant or a great chef can't afford to pay himself staying in that one particular restaurant. So you go out and you create management agreements and help. Your expertise goes to another project. To a certain degree, you can do that and manage it, and brand building is important. If you have a good brand and you can lend it to another restaurant to help get publicity and teach, that's an opportunity for income. But in the smaller restaurants in New York, in my New York properties, the chef has to do the pastries now. The maitre d' has to be the general manager now. So you need to go. You're going back to two hats, that mom and pop mentality. We walked away from that for a while. We had sommeliers, pastry chefs, and all these fringe jobs that we thought we needed, and they were good when the money was flowing. Well, now you got to kind of take it back down. The politicians getting involved in our businesses is affecting our bottom line. And that's it.
Let's look at the labor costs. Besides, the tip credit, the vacation pay, the sick leave, all of these additional expenses are operating over there. The minimum wage, what you're paying somebody to be a dishwasher over there, it's changed. You've been in the business right now close to 40 years of your life, okay? Would you recommend to some young person to go into this business?
Absolutely not. I counseled somebody today who's about to go to the Cornell Hotel School. And I said, what's your interest? He said, finance. I said, great. Keep it like that, not food and beverage. I mean, I just came back from a trip to Vienna and Munich, and you leave 10% as a tip, and they thank you profusely. Over here, we've been leaving 20% almost automatically, and you get sued.
Yeah, but I think people don't understand the whole tip credit thing. I think that's a conversation that's very complicated, and I think the regular person that goes out to dinner doesn't quite understand how this whole thing works. They don't understand that our waiters are making 40 to 60 or 80 bucks an hour when our cooks are making 20, 26 bucks an hour. They don't understand.
Nor do they care, by the way. Nor do they.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Mark's 100% correct. And the idea of trying to make it more fair and equitable. But if we, as free-thinking individuals, say, "Well, let's split the gratuities with the kitchen," guess what? It's against the law. So it's like you can't. And then Danny Meyer in his infinite.
Yeah, what happened with Danny Meyer and the
Well, Michael, let me ask you a
I
question.
remember when
Let me ask you a question. If you made $300 million, would you be so worried about your next move? I mean, come on. I mean, God bless Danny Meyer. He's a terrific person. He's a friend of mine. But he rolled the dice, I would say, maybe 3 years too early.
Right.
Ultimately, we might all have to do this.
Yeah.
But to look like the
But didn't he lose his place, or he closed his place down in the Battery Park City, which
he's just like us. He has the exact same problems that we do. Every chef, the guy at Union Square left, the guy at Maialino left, the guy at Marta left. I mean, come on. None of us has, look, he's a terrific operator, but nobody has the magic touch. Nobody.
But I hear a lot from colleagues of mine that they're like, they're saying, I'm not doing it in Manhattan. I'm not doing it in New York anymore. It's just too onerous on our business model here in New York. I'd rather go open up in another state because they're a much more, I actually talked to somebody the other day who they opened a restaurant in another state somewhere, and they said that the city came and see them 3 times before they opened. Do you need anything?
Right.
Yeah, everything okay?
No,
Can we help you with
I'll
anything?
give you an
Here,
example.
here they come in and they're
Creating
going,
jobs.
we're going to fine you for this. We're going to
give you-
fine you for
Send the health
that.
department in.
No, exactly. Willie Deagle was on my show, different show, and he opened up in Georgia. And he said that the people in Georgia were so willing to help him. They were giving incentives, they were creating. I mean, you don't have incentives to create jobs, okay? The only incentive you might get, if you have a location in Manhattan, you open up in Brooklyn, you might be able to qualify for a REIT benefit, but I'm not sure about that.
Somebody has to get wise to the fact that we are the biggest employer of people in this city, that we also bring in the tourists. I mean, you know, after 3 days in Vienna, I had exhausted the best restaurants over there. Here, you could come a year, you wouldn't exhaust the best restaurants.
I think that what I think has to happen here is I think that people in our government have to sit down, and I don't want them to look in the rearview mirror and think they screwed up New York City, because right now it's turning into basically like an airport. We're going to get CVS's, Starbucks, and Chase Banks and things like that. You know, people come to New York for diversity. Why W50 doesn't exist anymore is people used to come to go to his restaurant. People used to come to go to restaurants like that. Nobody's coming here to go to Chick-fil-A. You can stay home and eat Chick-fil-A. You can go to the airport and eat Chick-fil-A. Nothing wrong with Chick-fil-A.
The Popeye sandwich.
But you know what I mean? It's just one of those things. People come here for tourism. They come to see Broadway. They come to see museums. They come to see the beautiful sights. They come to see restaurants. But in 5 years from now, if all of us are gone and we're not opening interesting restaurants anymore, it's not that's a whole chunk of the business that you're going to lose.
It happened in Paris. The restaurants used to be so much better, but they had their labor laws changed.
So
you used to be able to work free there.
Here's the question: who were your customers? Are they visitors or are they people from the city?
People on the Upper East Side, regular customers, fans, loyal customers. Concierges send us visitors. And then we promote them. We promote the heck out of ourselves as best we can with social media. And
I have a lot of corporate guys on Park Avenue, a lot of local guys, a lot of traveling businessmen.
And who do you have one landmark?
When I was Time Warner, it was a local restaurant. Really, it was. People didn't understand that I opened like a local business there. There was a lot of people that lived in a 10-block radius around the Time Warner Center. There's a lot of them. Tribeca was the same thing. Of course, you know, I got to say, you know, when I opened Tribeca. And I know I was coming into Drew's territory because, you know, Drew had all the restaurants there. By the way, just I used to work for Drew. I was opening sous chef at Layla, so I knew the neighborhood well. When I opened my restaurant Landmark in Tribeca, it was after 9/11. There was your restaurants. There was the Odeon, which was there before. There was maybe 10 restaurants that were of note in Tribeca.
Chanterelle.
Now there's 80 of them. I mean, really, it boomed up. I mean, there's a lot of restaurants down there now.
So wait a second. If it's so hard to go into the restaurant business, why are people going into this business?
You ever hear that expression, fools rush in?
Some of us don't know how to do anything else.
Well, but it appears glamorous and sexy, and it's a vanity investment. A lot of people want to say.
I was saying it earlier. If you have a couple of bucks in your pocket and you open a restaurant, you're a restaurateur.
That's right.
So where do you make money in the restaurant business? How can you make money? You know, you were talking about what you have in Fort Lee. You have your great food, but in reality, the profit is being made in the booze.
Some of the suburbs are starved for really good restaurants, and they're ready. It took Jersey a long time to be ready to eat out on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night. Music helps. Big bar scene, lots of singles, lots of divorce, and quality. So they're willing to pay for something, and we can get exposure out there now.
Yeah, but
I've got a couple of properties.
Has Uber helped you too?
Uber helps too. Good point.
I think that's a huge difference in the
especially
suburbs.
in the suburbs.
You can go out there now.
You mean Uber as in the travel, not Uber Eats?
No,
Uber,
as in
people
take
come.
an Uber
I
home.
think they'll come and they'll drink a little bit more because they don't have to drive.
I think
Big,
you know.
I mean, girls on the weekends and couples, they'll come when they know
they
they're
don't have to
drinking.
drive. Yeah.
And that's a great point. Yes, it helps.
Good.
Especially down the beach where you got to drive on Ocean Avenue. We have a place in Seabright. It's one road. So if you're pulling out at 11 p.m. on a winter night, good chance you've been eating or drinking and stuff. So it depends on the towns too. But I think that people are ready willing to spend some money. Maybe not $150 a head like New York, but at $75, $80, and that's plenty. And the minimum wage there is much lower for the wait staff. It's $2.50 an hour versus what is it here, 11?
I think it's 10.
10.
Yeah.
And it's going to go up. I mean, if you know, the minimum wage going up in New York, the 2 weeks paid
Vacation,
sick days.
Those are hangover days.
Those, if you have a $40,000 or $50,000 a week payroll, that's $100,000. The minimum wage goes up. It's about $300,000. It's $400,000 or $500,000 for a nice sized restaurant that you just took away.
So now you can't go open another restaurant because your profits.
You got to stop having kids.
You know?
That's right.
I would say Cheesecake Factory. I mean, I noticed this years ago. When you got the menu, they had advertising. That's revenue, right? We would never think to put an ad on the menu.
Your buddy.
The diners did it for years.
No, but I'm going to give you better. You know who's doing that right now?
Who's that?
Shelley.
no
Shelley
kidding.
Fireman
No kidding.
he has his wine menu is an advertisement for his Broadway shows and other things.
Incredible.
Okay, so he's taken that section of a menu, a separate menu, to take over there, and he's selling advertising space.
The other way you can make a buck, but this is, if you're somebody like Marc Murphy or David Burke, where you've worked your whole career, you have a name, you've had a little bit of television, you can make a deal for top dollar, meaning, and I have it at the stadiums and I have it at Madison Square Garden. They pay us. They pay us for our services. We don't have to worry about any expenses.
The operation.
And we lend our expertise, and we either make a great hamburger or do a wonderful restaurant at Citi Field or whatever it is. But so they're paying him, and he doesn't have to think twice about the profitability.
Management.
But guess what? When we went into hotels a couple of years ago, that was the idea, right? But guess what? I was uptown and I went to Margarelle. Have you ever been to Margarelle? Yeah. So then I had lunch because one of the managers is a friend of mine. I said, the place was packed, and your prices, it was $122 per person for 3 courses. And they had layers of service and everything. I said, I don't know, how does it work economically? He says, the hotel doesn't charge us rent.
It's not enough sometimes.
I mean, so it's an amenity.
Right.
It's a hotel for the
I
amenity.
think that in the old days, Chicago Alley, you think of all those fancy restaurants back in the days before I was in New York. I mean, I know you were here a little earlier than I was, but people were in hotels, and then all of a sudden it all shifted, and nobody wanted to be in a hotel because it was bad.
Right.
It was bad being in a hotel. But I think now you're going to have to go back into the hotel and get deals like that if you want to do an interesting restaurant.
Most people are making deals like that. Most people.
Yeah, hotels, they need restaurants.
We're all in the same boat. You got to skin a cat. You figure it out.
You got to make it less labor intensive.
But it's got to be. You got to make it.
Well, guess what? Bobby Vans. Now think about this for a second. I used to be so envious of these guys because they got away with everything. They could put a steak on a plate for $50, a side dish for $12. I once watched a waiter at Sparks go around like a 13 top, steak, okay, baked potato or spinach. One guy's paying the bill, but every time he's asking a guy if he wants the baked potato or French fries, spinach or broccoli, he's adding $24.
So get to your point about Bobby Vance.
Helps pay for the
Okay,
steak.
so I was jealous, but then I grew up at Frankie and Johnny's as a kid, right? And so sometimes when you go back to a place as an adult, it's like, where the hell am I, right? The kitchen was like the size of a closet. They had one guy
Cooking steaks.
cooking the steak, making the salad. He had a garbage bag full of greens. He put his hand in the thing, put the salad down, boom. So in other words, the steakhouses, they had no chefs.
Right.
You follow me here, Mike?
Yeah, but in reality, let's look at a steak operation which is a number of years old, Wolfgang's. He doesn't have chefs, okay? There's no master chef at any of the Wolfgangs.
He basically worked. He worked
He
at
was a
Peter
waiter.
Luger's, and he basically said, "I'm going to do Peter
But he's
Luger's."
still paying somebody to manage the kitchen. He might not be a chef.
Right,
Yeah,
He's
he's
still
got
got
workers,
payroll. He's still got to pay
But
for all
you
the
still
They all
need
want a
somebody-
raise.
But
They
you
all
need
want a
somebody
raise.
as the front of the house.
You're not paying $150,000.
Listen. You know who screwed up the steakhouses? Charlie Palmer Steak, John George Prime in Las Vegas, Bobby Flay Steak. Everybody, all the chefs then. And guess what?
Wait a second.
Guess what?
There was
David Burke steak.
David Burke was a Primus.
Steakhouse once.
And they couldn't leave it alone. So like a shrimp cocktail.
Yeah.
What do? You get the shrimp in, you put it with some cocktails. So, no, they have to grill the shrimp.
And add mango.
And all the nuts. And so they culinarily screwed up, and they made
raised the
something
labor
that was low.
cost.
Yeah, right, exactly.
It's okay. You've
They
kept
They
it
made
where
it
it's
labor
supposed to be.
intensive.
Well, you know what we also did? We made it labor intensive when we added runners. And that was a big expense now.
Yeah.
Years ago, in the 80s.
A waiter
we didn't have
cost you
runners.
nothing. A waiter
No,
cost
the
you
waiter
20
went back
bucks.
and got his own tray. They put the lid
Yes.
Yeah,
on.
boom.
Because chefs like me, we came along and said, I want a square plate. I want a rectangle plate. I want my food
That's
this
when you
high.
were a prima
No
donna.
lids. Now,
I worked-
now you need 2 runners to
What?
take an 8-top out.
You wanted a lot of height.
Remember, somebody would say, "Can I get a glass of water?" I say, "I'll get you a waiter." Because you're right. Nobody
Right.
worked together.
No, we
so
went
what did we
way
do?
the other way.
What did we do? The enlightened people, when we started, I was 29 years old. We're gonna all work together. We're gonna all split the tips together, And then we're all going to get sued together
Right.
because now it's like, well, I don't want to split my tips with this one, and then he only worked in the, and so we had this idea of Shangri-La, like we were going to correct all the things as workers that we saw the improprieties, and you can't fight City Hall. That's what happens.
Well, it's state government, really.
Yeah,
a lot of
the
this.
state.
Department of Labor is all the state government. I think that the problem also, when you look at what's happening, at the state level with what's happening in our businesses, I think somebody's really got to sit down. There's got to be there's an office of film and movie, right? There should be an office of restaurants and catering and food business, because it's such a big thing. But somebody's got to sit there and study it.
That's an interesting thing.
But here's another thing: is I think our politicians have to go to London, for example, and find out why pubs still exist over there, right? That's a national treasure, and to me, the bodega is a national treasure. I mean, when I was a kid and I would be out and I'd stop at the bodega to go home and cook dinner when I met somebody and wanted to impress them at home. What do you do now? I mean, it's like you got to save these places.
And then we're all crying, right? And then Keith McNally opens Pastis, and they're doing $1,500 a day,
They're banging over there. They'll tell you.
serving the most old-fashioned.
But good.
Yeah, I mean,
Very
it's
well.
fine. I mean,
But wait a second, he's a destination.
But also
has
Stephen Starr's running it for him.
give Stephen credit. He's a terrific
I got to
operator.
say that's the one thing that I also see is like if there's a couple ways to do this. Either you want to open a restaurant, you can basically handcuff yourself to the stove. You become the manager, you become the chef, you become the busboy. You can make a living in New York City, but you got to stay in one spot and you got to work 7 days a week. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. A la Andrea Saltner, right? Or else you've got these huge organizations like Stephen Starr. You've got obviously Michael Stillman. You got these guys have another type of operation where they have this cream on the top, which is they have their in-house lawyer, they got their in-house HR, their in-house generalists.
Yeah, but
they've got all that because you can't run. And then what they're doing
But they
is
have a huge operation.
but each operation pays up to that, right?
The economy of scale is helping those operations.
Exactly.
Yeah,
but then they can
when
pay for all the
it's
other.
bad, they get hit hard too. When you got a big corporate overhead payroll.
But if you don't have that corporate overhead payroll, you're going to end up getting bit by the
Well, you gotta
by
find
the
that
lawyers.
happy medium.
You know what the most incredible thing is? Like, I've had the Batard space downtown for 35 years. Montrachet, Cortone, Batard. So the last 2 years we opted to go into Restaurant Week. Restaurant Week is $42 for dinner. My normal price for 3 courses is $89. So literally it's less than half. The Restaurant Week opens, we sell every single table at every single slot for 4 weeks. By the way, they call it Restaurant Week, it's Restaurant Month. And the people come in. There's just one problem. So because you're busy doing 150 covers instead of 60 or 80, you have to have more staff. They work overtime.
Right.
So every cook's making $1,000 a week because he's working time and a half.
Dishwashers make it $1,000.
And you wind up making no money.
And they complain.
And they complain that it
wasn't as good as-
portion was too small.
So where do we see the restaurant hospitality business in New York in 5 years?
Bars and taverns with 2 guys in the kitchen.
Well, people still have to gather. I mean, look, restaurants, it's our one thing that, you can't export this because people still have to gather and get together. I'm not really sure where it's going to go. I just think
at Landmark, you had that community table. People loved it over there, okay? At Bobby Vance, people love going to the bar. They like the community. It's, you're going to a place, a restaurant is like a club.
I think we're seeing it in airports now with the iPads. I think technology is going to come into play here. I think that if somebody put a gun to my head and said, I have to open another Landmark again tomorrow, I would say, okay, but I'm getting rid of all the waiters. I'm going to have runners, and that's it. I'm going to have like a cashier like the old days in those diners, right? And you're going to order your food, and you're going to order your drinks at the bar, and you're going to get a little tent with a number, and we're going to put it on the table when you sit down. They're going to bring you your food.
Do you see? Would you open up a Bobby Vans or David Burke at the airport? Do you think airports are a possible way to make a good living?
The worst. The rent in the airports is more than like 15 or 20% rent.
Well, it depends on the deal. I have an airport. They pay me a license fee. I don't pay.
Okay, there it is.
They want.
But
they want.
the airports are a different type of business.
Well, the airport makes.
That was the first place
But
I
you
saw
got to
the
maintain
tablets.
it. You got to maintain it. You got to maintain it. But if you get good employees and you give them the playbook and they stick by it, it becomes a chain mentality.
I went through so many security. So they have this open atrium. And
it's even more interesting since it's union at the TWA Hotel.
Oh, is it?
So if you add the additional expense of operating with Local 6 with Peter Ward at the hotel, the cost of operation.
But the hotel has over 550 rooms, and they also did a deal with JetBlue, so all their employees stay there. They get a deal. So they did a really good job. Whoever the hotel operator is, I forgot his name, but they did a good deal to get it
Tyler
going,
Morse,
right?
MCR.
Right. And so that I think is, but that's a good example of, okay, so you got a restaurant, you got a hotel, but you're kind of blending the two businesses to make the money, because you're probably not going to make the money in the restaurants. You're going to make the money in the beds.
Why
it's a different thing.
That's an example of what you had at Landmark and what you have at 230 Park Avenue and Grand Central. Okay? People are there. Some of the restaurants over there at Grand Central are the worst things, but you have so many people congregating over there.
Well, New York City's got the people, it's got the conventions, it's got the tourism.
At the end of the day,
It's got expense accounts.
For now.
The suburbs doesn't have that.
at the end of the day, it's
They don't
simple
chase it
economics,
away.
Michael. My whole career, I kept prices low, and we always did volume. We worked hard and we made money. Now, as prices go up, simple economics, the volume goes down. It's just the way it is. So, the rent's high, the food's high, the labor's high. We raise the prices to meet that.
And volume's down.
The volume's down. That's it. Very, very difficult. And wine, we have to have another show, but the wine prices are insane.
Okay? Unfortunately, you own a liquor store where you sell a lot of wine.
I make money.
Okay, but needless to say, I'd like to thank my normal guest over here, Mr. Nieporent,
great
for
to be
bringing
back.
some of his friends, Chef Marc Murphy, Ricky Passarelli, and David Burke, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you.